When we start talking about weed control, there's really two things that we want to take care of. We want to maximize the damage to our target plant or the weed that we're trying to get rid of, while minimizing the damage to the non-target plants or to the other resources around that plant. Now, Miss Adams has really taken a lot of initiative, as you can see here, by pulling up quite a bit of toad flax. And this kind of hand weeding or mechanical control can be effective, especially if undertaken on a year-to-year basis and not just 1 year. So another good method for controlling weeds is chemical control or the use of herbicides. Now, there are a few things that you want to be careful of when using herbicides. You want to be sure that you've correctly identified your target weed like we've done here, to be sure that you've got a chemical that is active on that weed. You want to apply at the correct rates to minimize the potential for damage on non-target plants, and to be sure that you actually apply enough chemical that will effectively control or provide some long-term control on the weed that you're trying to manage. You also want to be sure that you correctly calibrate your equipment. Now, for more information on that, you can find articles or information on the website for the Barnyards and Backyards website. So go there, find more information. You can also talk to your county weed and pest supervisor or folks that are there, or get in touch with the Cooperative Extension Service. They can help you with determining correct rates, correct herbicides, and fitting those to your situation, and they can also help you with understanding how to best calibrate your equipment. Another weed control option that's used pretty widespread around the U.S. is what we would call biological control. Now, it may consist of targeted grazing, or oftentimes it consists of using insects that will feed on a particular weed. Now, those insects go through a rigorous testing process to ensure that they will not switch and eat some of your more desirable plants. But we do have several biological control agents or insects that are currently in use for Dalmatian toad flax. Now, oftentimes they're used in remote areas that are difficult to access, where there are large populations that can support a population of the biocontrol insect. Now, if there were biocontrol insects in this population, we may see some damage to the stems where the agents were actually boring down through the stem. We don't, but it's definitely an option. And if you have some areas that you may be a little reluctant to apply herbicide next to streams, or if you have a place that has dense infestations of some of these weeds, biological control may be an option for you. We've discussed a few important points when we're talking about assessing your property for weeds and different weed control techniques. And I just wanted to touch on a few other things that you might want to keep in mind, is that different weeds might be prioritized differently. We talked about Dalmatian toad flax quite a bit. Now, that's one of our worst weeds in the state, and I would put it really high on a priority list for control on your property. Now, something like this annual mustard, they're very common, they're very widespread, and if you have limited resources, you may spend those resources on Dalmatian toad flax control rather than on something like this if you have to choose. We also talked about choosing sites that may be more susceptible to invasion, such as roadsides or places where there's disturbed soil where they did some construction work, versus places that may provide better wildlife habitat already. Now, I would say that the more intact sites probably provide more services for wildlife or livestock, or just more aesthetic purpose, and you may want to take a prevention approach. If you find new weeds becoming established in those areas and you can implement control early before they become well established, your probability of success for eradicating those weeds on your property will be much higher, rather than being a little bit complacent, waiting for those weeds to become well established, because in some of these cases, when you have these really strong perennial plants, you may never get rid of them, and you may be more in a management situation and trying to minimize their impact on your property. So if you have any questions, visit the Barnyards and Backyards website. Feel free to contact any of your local natural resources professionals, and I thank you for your time. I'm Brian Mealor from the University of Wyoming Cooperative Extension Service.